not facing you all, but I appreciate you all being here. I know that it's hard after you've had a long day of work trying to come out and, just kind of listen to what ACAP is about. I definitely believe in ACAP. I talk to families all day long where they are struggling taking care of their loved ones. So, we today are going to talk about responding to challenging behaviors of Alzheimer's and other dementias. Now, don't y'all get nervous about my screen. I know it's small, but I'm going to tell you everything on it, so don't go straining your eyes, okay? So I have a question. How many of you all have ever been accused of stealing from your parent? Raise your hand. What about them saying, that's not my daughter? Or, I want to go home. Where's my husband? You never come and see me anymore, even though you were just there yesterday. If you've experienced any of these, then tonight is for you. Because dementia doesn't just affect one person, it ripples through the hearts, routines, and relationships of everyone who loves them. Tonight, I want to help you understand something that changed the way I care for people living with dementia. First thing I had to understand is the behavior is not the problem. The behavior is the symptom, and every behavior is communication. The question the question isn't how do I stop this behavior? The question is, what is this person trying to tell me? That simple shift can completely transform your caregiving experience. One of the biggest myths about dementia is that memory loss is the hardest part. But that's not what I feel is the biggest myth. I believe the hardest part is watching someone you love become someone you don't recognize. The mother who never raised her voice now becomes that angry mom. The father who is always calm, now he begins to accuse you of stealing or doing something to him. The spouse who always trusted you suddenly doesn't know who you are. And that's heartbreaking. If we peel back the layers, that's just heartbreaking to deal with. But understanding what's happening inside the brain helps you respond differently. When someone has dementia, their brain loses the ability to properly process information. So imagine waking up every day confused. Imagine not knowing where you are. Imagine not being able to find the words that you're looking for. Imagine feeling scared, but not being able to explain why. If you can imagine that, you'd probably be frustrated too. So I teach the STOP method to my caregivers and to families who are dealing with patients with dementia. And what STOP means is stop reacting. That's what the S is for. The T is think about what you may have changed. The O is observe what the behavior is trying to communicate. And then P is proceed with compassion. And if you know anything about me, I am big on having compassion. If you leave tonight remembering only one thing, you have to remember to just stop and what that stands for. Because the behavior you're seeing is often the result of an unmet need. It's usually not about what you think. It's about something else. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I had a resident who was convinced someone was stealing her purse every single night. Every day she would call her daughter, you stealing my purse. And I mean, she would go from 0 to 10 quick. And it was, you get her up out of bed. You're trying to put on her shirt. She look around. She didn't see her purse. That's when the yelling and fighting began. And so I had to just stop and think, what is it that she's trying to communicate? Because it's not about the purse. The purse was a symbol for something that she was losing. So control, losing the ability to put a shirt on, losing the ability to even know where she was. That's what it was about. It wasn't about the purse, right? So some of the common challenges when you're dealing with certain behaviors, before you assume that a behavior is dementia, I want you to ask yourself, could it be pain? Could it be fear? Could it be hunger, dehydration, urinary tract infection, loneliness? Usually there is something else going on. I can't tell you how many times families have told me mom's dementia is suddenly getting worse, or only for us to discover that she had an infection, right? The brain of someone living with dementia is already working harder than yours and mine. It doesn't take much to throw things off. When the patient starts having repetition, what does that mean? One of the most frustrating behaviors families face is repetition. What time are we leaving? 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 They say the same things over and over and over again. And after about that 12th time, every caregiver wants to scream, right? It's just being real. But you have to remember this. To them, each time they're saying it, it's like their first time. They're not trying to annoy you. Their brain simply cannot store the answer. So instead of saying, I already told you, and being short with them, you want to say something like, we're all set. We'll leave when it's time. Or don't worry, I've got it handled. Now, that may not stop them from asking the question again in 10 minutes, but it does help their brain to kind of shift away in the moment, and it de escalates the moment for you. Because people with dementia often remember feelings long after they forget facts. Wandering is another behavior. I have worked with a gentleman. Every day around 4 o'clock, he was going to the door. He felt that he had to put his coat on, his hat on, even in the summer here in beautiful Texas. He was going to put his coat and his hat on. And every day around 4 o'clock, he would go and he would stand by that door. And it wasn't that he really wanted to go home or he felt that his wife was coming for him because his wife had passed away. But he just felt like he needed to go and be with her. So for the next 20 minutes, he would smile and laugh. He told stories. He showed me pictures. What he was really looking for wasn't trying to go home to his house. He was simply looking for love. He was looking for that connection. That's what he was missing from his wife that has passed away. And so when you're able to tap into those moments for patients and really understand what it is, again, they're looking for and not just what they're saying, you can usually answer their need. The next thing I want to urge you to do is don't argue. If you are arguing, stop arguing. Stop it. Stop arguing. This may be the most important thing I tell you tonight. Why? Because you cannot win an argument with dementia. You will not win. Dementia is going to tap you out every single time. Because even if you're right, especially if you're right, they're going to think in their mind that they're right. So why continue to argue? If mom thinks it's 1972, correcting her won't help. If dad thinks he still has to go to work, arguing will not help. Meet them where they are. You don't have to live in their reality, but sometimes you do need to visit it. Validation is one of the greatest gifts we can offer. So instead of saying, your mother died 30 years ago, you can say, tell me about your mom. You're just diverting, okay? Now you've created connection instead of pain. Imagine telling somebody that their loved one has died over and over again. That's not comfortable. So we change it up a little bit. So aggression is another big one that goes on with dementia. One of my sweet little ladies that I've cared for, she's still in my home right now. She is a completely different person Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Why? That's shower days, right? One day, her daughter was present during showers. And I told her daughter, this is not what you want. Go and do what you need to do. Let us do what we do. Because families sometimes can be like, oh my God, my mom, this is, I can't believe she's acting this way. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And they don't understand that we deal with this every single day, right? So her daughter was horrified because her mom was never like this. I told her, actually, she still isn't. That's not your mom. That's a disease process. So figured out some ways that we could kind of alter things. The bathroom not being cold Thankfully, we were in one of my homes that still had the heater in the bathroom. So we turned on the heater before bath time. So when we walked in, nice and cozy in there. The lights are bright. Well, we turned on just the one in the shower instead of all of them. We set the tone for her to have a nice warm bath. And so, doing those simple things, we realized that she was just scared. She didn't know what was going on, even though we do this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday like clock. But she was in a new environment. Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays don't mean anything to her. And only thing she knew is she was being brought out of her bed into another room that was bright, and you hear a whole lot of noise with the water running, and we're trying to take off her clothes. Now, how would you feel if you could not process that information? You know, I always tell my families, imagine if you were blindfolded and I take you into a room and you couldn't see anything, so it's dark, and I'm trying to take off your shirt. We already know that's not going to fly. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're probably going to start fighting for your life, right? So it's the same thing because, again, their brain cannot process what's happening. So what looked like aggression and her trying to fight my caregiver and trying to fight me, trying to fight her daughter, it wasn't her being combative, as we say in the medical field, or her being aggressive. It was her fighting because she was afraid. So fear disguised as resistance, and fear is something we can work with. We can change that up. So another story I wanted to tell you all about a patient I had, I call it the story going home. I had another resident who has to go home at least 20 times a day. Her family would respond, "Mom, you're at home. You're at home." She became frustrated. They became frustrated. Nobody won. One day I sat beside her and asked, "What do you miss about being home?" She described her mother's cooking. She described hearing her father's voice. She described sitting around the family table, and she described feeling safe. That's when it hit me. Home wasn't a place, home was a feeling. So again, tapping into what the real issue is, not necessarily what the behavior is. People always ask me, "Oh my God, Lovey, why do you do this? How can you work with, the senior population? How do you do it? Why do you do it?" One evening, I was helping a resident get ready for bed, and she had the advanced dementia, and it was like stage 5. She was bad. She was really bad. She rarely spoke. She couldn't remember her child's name. And as I tucked her in and grabbed her hand, and she grabbed my hand and looked at me after not speaking for weeks. And we had this lady in my home probably about 3 months. And I was just at the point thinking, okay, she's just not going to talk. We might get a nod here and there. But on that particular evening, she grabbed my hand and she said, looked me dead in my eye, and she said, "Thank you for loving me." Gee, you could have bought me for a penny. I started crying. I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." Okay. And she looking at me, I'm looking at her, and I'm like, okay, let me pull it together. But I realized that I had tapped into her emotional side, right? I had made her feel something that she felt enough in her soul to be able to open up her mouth without talking for several weeks, maybe months. It was a long time. And it was at that moment that I was reminded that even when memories fade, the need for love never does. So as I get ready to wrap up tonight, after all these years and all these families with the same thing going on, families saying they just want their mom back, they just want their dad back, I get it. I really do. Dementia isn't a journey backwards, y'all. It's a journey forward. The question really becomes, can we still find moments of joy in anything that we're doing for our loved ones? Can we still find moments of connection in one simple task, in one simple errand that we're running? laundry that we're doing, can we find some type of connection? And most importantly, the one I love, can we still find love in what we do? Because at the end of the day, we have to remember that although we were looking at our mom, our dad, our Aunt Bob, Uncle Bob, Aunt Susie, anybody that we're caring for, we're looking at them, but that's not really them, right? The disease process has usually taken over. So we want to make sure that we're not getting upset with them and making sure that we're not resentful towards them because it is the dementia. So the answer hopefully is yes, because it may look different, but it has to be there. That love, that connection, and that joy. We've got to keep those at the core of everything that we're doing. One day, your loved one may forget your name, they may forget your birthday, they may forget who you are, but research continues to show that emotional memory often lasts much longer than factual memory. They may not remember what you said, but they will always remember what you did. Because behind every challenging behavior is a human being trying to be heard. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for coming today and wanting to learn more about dementia. Dementia is a very, very hard disease process. If you have any questions, I will take them at this moment, or I'm always available through my webpage, through my business, my phone number I can give out if need be. Anybody with questions? Sure. Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, and so the repetitiveness is hard because there are times where you have to say what it is, you know what I'm saying, and just answer the question or either move them on. I would not stay in that space repetitively. I would not, because that builds a lot of frustration, right? Because we're human, right? We all have feelings and emotions and all that. So I would answer the question truthfully the first time. And then as it continues, change the subject. Excuse me, change the subject. And that way, if you're changing the subject, then your brain allows you just to go somewhere else. Whereas their brain is like, oh, okay. Well, wait a minute. They can't remember that you're trying to take them somewhere else. So if we're talking about what do we do when it's time to go to the bathroom and you answer her, push the button, and then she comes right back again, what do I do? How do I go to the bathroom? Well, Mom, how was your day today? I went to the bathroom yesterday and I got up and you'd have to incorporate whatever her abilities are. Or I asked for help when I needed to go to the bathroom. I think you should do that too. What do you think? And you're just slightly changing it up so that you're not demeaning to them, you know? You're respecting them, you're giving them dignity, but you're also protecting your mental health. And I think a lot of caregivers forget that your mental health is really important during this time because if they're already demented, and you're the caregiver, you have to be of sound mind and body, you know? And so, whatever that looks like for each individual, I wish that there was a cookie cutter answer that it would apply in every situation for everybody, but it's not. So, you have to know what your limitations are. Okay, you get three. What do I go to the bathrooms? And then after that, you know what I'm saying? I'm done. Whereas the next person can take 10. How do I go to the bathrooms? But if yours is three, that's perfectly fine. You know that you're a three. Your magic number is three. And then after that, take it somewhere else. You know, Mom, I'm not going to answer that question, but I do want to know, what'd you eat for lunch today? And I mean, make it random. Whatever you need to take it somewhere else. And that kind of helps.
And that protects your boundary too.
Exactly.
And everybody's kind of filled and empty differently.
Yeah, some people have 44 ounces, some people have 8 ounces, you know? And it's very important. I tell my families all the time, you have to identify how big your cup is. And not, we as women, no offense to you, sir, but we as women tend to act, we tend to want a 44 ounce, but really we got a 10 ounce. And so even when we're at about a nine, we're trying to get a little bit more. Now we're at a 15, and then that's when it all falls apart. So truthfully identify and be okay with it. Because that the saying is so true. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You just cannot. You may be able to do it one day, but continuously, no. And what's going to happen is you're going to be resentful, you're going to be bitter, you're going to be short with them. And I promise you, they just don't deserve that because they're doing the best they can. If they could stop answering or asking those questions, they would. But they don't even know. Their brain is 8 seconds at a time and then it resets. And we're back to, it's just like you remember back in the day, I'm telling my age, blockbuster tapes where you had to rewind them before, and even if it went just a few seconds, they would put it in that machine and used to drive me crazy. I was like, it's just that we just over the credits. But anyway, I digress. Sorry. I'll go off on a rabbit hole. But that's what you have to understand is where you are, be truthful about it, and don't act like you're a 44-ounce cup when you're only an 8 ounce. Yeah. You're welcome. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
A whole nother story where it gets so low that he blacks out.
Right.
You
Yeah. That battle right there. That is a hard battle because they're not hearing, Mom or Dad, you can't drive. What they're hearing is, you're telling me what to do, you're trying to control me, or you are taking everything or the last thing I got, right? That's what they're hearing. So when it comes to driving, that is a very, very hard one. When do you take the keys? We have some of our loved ones that will surrender their keys. We love them. And then we have family members like yours and mine where it's more of a challenge, right? And then they have other comorbidities that don't help the situation. So, what I would recommend is just sitting down and having a conversation with him. Dad, we do not want to have something happen to you or for you to cause harm to another individual that's going to put us in financial distress. If you go out here, and sometimes you have to make it, this is where I get good at it because I'm a little over the top and dramatic anyway. So these skills come in handy. I say, We don't want to be bankrupt because you go out here and you hit somebody and they come and sue us. They take our house, our car, and, just grandiose problems, right? And you present that to him. And then, even if you have to take it a step forward and tell him, we don't want you to take somebody else's life, let alone your own life. So we really need you to sit down somewhere. You have worked hard your entire life. Now it's our turn to take care of you. And I'm not just saying this, I just had this conversation with my own father. Oops, sorry, Dad. But I did, because of the same thing. He went out, he said somebody hit him. He said, yeah, he said somebody hit him, but the math ain't mathin', right? I think he hit somebody. And so it's just time. So let us, as your grandchildren, as your children, let us serve you in this capacity. That way you can still have your freedom. You don't get hurt, and you just present it that way. And hopefully, and I'm not just saying you're going to go in there and do it one time and it works, but if you continue to have this conversation, and I think that's where families go wrong, is that they are very scared to talk about these things, you know? And I think sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's just, what do you call it when it's age? You're just trying to be respectful. Well, respecting your elders, but I thought it was another word for it. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, "Ooh, I could never tell my dad that because they're my elder." But at some point, you have to sit down and you have to say, "Okay, we need to talk about your condition. We need to talk about how we're gonna care for you in your later days because we don't want you hurt. We want you safe. We want you independent as long as possible." Always throw that in there. That helps. "Dad, we want you to be independent as long as possible, and driving may take that away from you. We don't want the police to pull you over and say," and hopefully if you had those conversations a few times, he will see the value in allowing his children, his grandchildren, his family to serve him in that matter by taking care of him. Worst case scenario, if he does not, we have to just kind of wait and then have the conversation again. Maybe after another wreck or another incident, I've seen that happen. We don't want that to happen, but again, I've seen it happen where they just they just won't do it. And you do have to protect. I'm a firm believer that you protect your relationship because at the end of the day, we only have them for so long. And so we can only control so much. So if we do our due diligence by continuing to have those conversations, then at the end of the day, if he did have another wreck and totaled the car and cost money or whatever, at least we can look back and say, well, we tried, as opposed to saying, well, we maybe should have talked to him earlier and nobody said anything because we were scared. Families need to stop being scared and talk to our seniors because they deserve that. Yeah, I hope that helps. Yes, sir.
I wanted to know if you have any guidance or suggestions for helping an older cis refuses to visit the doctor.
So we, after COVID, have been very fortunate because now you can get anything in your home. So sometimes you have to get creative with our seniors. What I've done with one of my seniors who was in that exact same situation is she loved company coming to her home. And so the family hired me as a nurse concierge. So I came out, I developed a relationship with her, and I told her I was going to have some friends stop by, that they just wanted to check on her to make sure I was doing the right thing. And so she was like, okay, she was all for it. What it was a visiting doctor. And so they came in and they did exactly what I said. They checked her to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. Now, granted, I was hired just to build a relationship with her to get her to that point. But at the end of the day, that's what, we accomplished the goal, which was to get her seen by a doctor. After that, a few weeks later, we were able to get a lab to come to her home to draw some labs. I was there even when they did that and helped her pee in a cup. So, you just gotta get creative with our seniors, and I've been in this industry for 30 years, so I got a lot of tricks up my sleeve. So, it depends on their personality, it depends on why they're being resistant. Sometimes me coming in as a visitor, I can get them to do things that you as the son or the family member will never be able to get them to do. And again, that's another thing that I think family members sometimes are not aware of is that they will beat that horse until the horse is just dead. And sometimes you just need to walk away and let somebody else direct the horse, meaning let somebody else come in and accomplish the goal that you're trying to get so that you don't mess up your relationship with your loved one.
Are those visitation services available in rural areas? I serve a 10-county region, and I know they're available like in Austin proper, Georgetown, more populated spaces. But I'm worried more for those people that are farther away that don't have quite the access to care.
For sure.
Do you know if the visiting nurses are just there's somebody that will go anywhere?
It depends. I can't speak to what each company will do, but I know that back in the day, prior to COVID, it was a lot harder for my rural, patients to get any kind of services. But nowadays, we have home health, hospice, visiting physicians, laboratories. We have them pretty much on every corner. And so it's more accessible. So, what I would encourage you to do is to simply figure out where that person is and just do a Google search, visiting physicians for this address or for this city or for this zip code and allow them to, call them and tell them, "Hey, this is the situation. I'm not sure if she'll go for it or not," and just tell them everything, and they'll work it out. Yeah, and if there's anything, like I said, that I can do, I don't know exactly what area you're talking about, but I'm more than willing to help. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Did you have a question? Therapeutic what? Right, for sure. Yeah. To me, I don't look at it as lying. I think about it as what the patient needs in the moment. So whether you're telling them that if their loved one has passed away, you're telling them that, oh, your loved one is okay. They are okay now, Even going even further to telling, hey, let's go to work when they think that they're getting dressed and you're really taking them to daycare, you know, but you're saying you're going to work. It just depends on what's going on and what's in the situation because a demented patient, they're not thinking about it as, oh, you're telling me a lie versus, oh, you're telling me the truth. Their brain has lost the capacity to do that. And so you are trying to get through the moment and to be supportive to them and to give them what they need in the moment. So I'm all for it. You call it, would you call it therapeutic lies? I call it being creative. So it's all the same. And I think you have to do it in order, again, to keep your own sanity and to give them some answers that they're, inquiring about because sometimes it's just needed. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you all again. I know that this discussion has helped not only me, but hopefully someone else in this room. So thank you, thank you, thank you.